Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the iHeartRadio network, the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys from down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys up in Canada, you know we love you up there. But Big C, there's no one I love more than all you good old boys down south in the land of the free, in the home of the brave. Big C, how's it going for all you good old boys?
It's going wonderful down here. The boys are sorry that this hot, sweaty, sticky weather. The moonshines have been a little low because, precipitation needs to be hydrated. But, other than that, it's wonderful. We're just waiting on this trade deadline to end baseball, so maybe we can talk about some baseball other than basketball.
I understand that too, Big C. Today is a beautiful July 25th, 2017, in the land of the free and the home of the brave. You talk about the heat wave that's hitting you good old boys down south. It's also hot here in California on the West Coast. But fortunately for us in California, everybody has a house on the Pacific Ocean, Big C. Can you say the same thing, Big C?
Well, Charlton, I think there's a little ocean running down the street here every now and then. The past 2 days, I've had the boat out ready to just go down the street. I didn't need to take it out.
That's so funny, Big C. We love talking about sports and all the great things in sports. They're doing the humanitarian sports work down in Los Angeles, and also a lot of good things happening across the world. Some things going on with CTE, and a lot of things we'll talk about also. But I want to say that today's segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Big C, I just want to start off a little bit. They were doing some things down in L.A. with the Sports Humanitarian Award. And, of course, I think even if you looked out in the universe, the greatest sports figure, in my opinion, in the history of the universe would be Muhammad Ali. And his daughter, Layla, is actually co-hosting that award. Sometimes we take for granted what Ali did, because Ali did his thing in Jim Crow. He didn't wait until they got civil rights. Ali did it in Jim Crow. And one of the reasons I think a lot of people are multi-millionaires today. Big C, your thoughts on the late Muhammad Ali?
Well, just like with Muhammad Ali and the late Dr. Martin Luther King, so many people stood on the sidelines, Charlton. It wasn't as active as what you think things were back during the civil rights movement. So many people didn't want to get caught up, in a scenario like we have now in modern times with, Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah.
People say, well, I don't want something to happen to me if this doesn't turn out right. So I'm going to stay silent, but I'm going to support him.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't always serve its credence.
Yeah.
But, when you go out and you put everything that you have on the line to benefit others, because the person who is making the sacrifice, it doesn't benefit them generally.
No.
And history has gone to prove that, Charlton, even as we cross-reference in sports.
Yeah.
Look at Kurt Floyd. When he fought for free agency for all of Major League Baseball, this was an African-American who took the forefront to say everybody deserves the right to choose where they want to play, regardless whether they're white, Dominican, African-American, South American, Cuban, whatever. This was an African-American who took the lead after civil rights to do this, Charlton, because he saw what was occurring in civil rights where he was an activist in.
Yeah.
And it allowed today's players, when we're talking about Bryce Harper, on the precipices of making possibly a $400 million contract.
Wow.
When we see these $200 million contracts signed like it's a cup of water, Charlton.
Yeah.
This is because of an African-American man allowed that to happen in Major League Baseball. Yet there's no statue erected of Kurt Floyd anywhere. He's not going to make it to the Hall of Fame other than creating the free agency, Charlton.
Yeah.
As a player,
he
was one of the best shortstops in the game. After 11 years in helping create free agency in Major League Baseball, Charlton, he never got a chance to play another game, just like Doug Williams in the NFL. So when we talk about humanitarians, that's what Ali did when he put his career on the line to stand up what he felt was an injustice to minority Americans having to go fight a war halfway around the world that really had no financial or social benefit to America. Other than to say that we were dominating a smaller, lesser country. That's all the Vietnam era did. I mean, there's a lot of veterans who made the ultimate sacrifice in that, and I'm not discrediting anything that they did, Charlton, for our country or what their families had to endure. Because I had family members that were there. But in the end, Ali was proven right years later that what he had said came to fruition.
Yeah.
But no one said that Muhammad Ali was right for taking that stance. I mean, Donald Trump, our current president, got six deferments from the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
So his father was able to buy him out of it, but yet he's talking about building up the military defenses of the United States.
But he won't go. He didn't say he's building it for him and his family. He won't go.
Bill Clinton got 8 deferments, former President Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
So we've had 2 presidents that were in during the Vietnam War that was eligible for draft,
Yeah.
got deferments. So when we talk about people being humanitarians, we talk about Ali, we talk about Kurt Floyd, we talk about those who have made the ultimate sacrifice for others to benefit. That's what a humanitarian is. We see Colin Kaepernick in modern times.
Yeah.
Dr. Martin Luther King and the group there with him, Dr. Abernathy, Rosa Parks, Charlton. We go on and on.
Yeah.
Arthur Ashe, a great humanitarian, because he brought the light of age to the world.
Yeah.
He opened it up, said, hey, this is something that can happen to anybody.
Yeah.
And because of what he did, being a humanitarian, explaining it to the world, that this is something you don't be afraid of, you educate yourself of it. These are what humanitarians are.
Well, that's something else.
People who go out and assist and look for aid for others, Charlton.
Yeah, and it's funny when you bring that up. I know just last year when we started Big C Sports, ESPN picked up a segment called The President, Race, and the People. But you really didn't hear much about that other than once a year. But obviously losing the late Muhammad Ali, I still think of guys like Jim Brown and what he means to sports, and Harry Edwards and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And even you look at one of the guys who really made all these interviews great, it was the late Howard Cosell. Some of the just, I guess you say, mavericks of our future in the world of broadcasting in sports. And then I still want to credit Lyndon Baines Johnson because he passed the voting rights bill. So it was almost like Lyndon Johnson and the Black Americans versus Jim Crow. And obviously Lyndon Johnson with the stroke of a pen, that won. And it just, I mean, when you think about it, they're talking about trying to get rid of health care right now. Every athlete in the world has the best access to health care while they're playing. Now, once they're cut from a team, they're kind of on their own, Big C. And a lot of guys, they run across that. So and when I watch the awards happen in Los Angeles, they have George Takei from Star Trek, actually. Could you imagine Captain Kirk and Spock? Were they actually listening to Big C Sports? You know they had the ability to go back in time, Big C. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Just transcend time, Jonathan. But, you know, as we transcend time today, and we look at how things manifest themselves in sports, and in politics, how parallel they are, how we need to open up and have greater dialogue in America. You know, it's almost like the president trying to bury his attorney general. Every time that something comes up, he's throwing a deflection.
You get fired.
He throws a better curveball than anybody in baseball right now.
Juan Marichal had nothing on Donald Trump's curveballs. We'll throw you right under the bus, Big C.
Who had one of the best curveballs in history.
Oh, yeah.
Was it revering the president? You know, here it is. He's trying to get rid of Jeff Sessions, the first senator to come on and back him. Because, you know, he's not opening up investigations elsewhere to deflect from this Russian allegation.
Well,
you know, all the president and his family has to do is shout to say, hey, there's nothing. Let's open up the books on everything. But, you know, what the president doing right now, Charlton, it reminds me of what Thomas Benson, the owner of the New Orleans Saints, did during a lawsuit with his family. Because the NFL is a 501(c)(3). It's a non-profit organization for all the owners, so they don't have to pay taxes on these millions of dollars that they make every year from the NFL and the labor of their players. So Thomas Benson was in a lawsuit with his family. Other than opening up the financial disclosure of the NFL and the New Orleans Saints, he just settled the lawsuit. He would pay out the tens of millions of dollars that the lawsuit covered instead of disclosing possibly over $1 billion, a couple of $1 billion in assets he had from this organization that he doesn't have to pay taxes on. And so that's what disclosure in politics and sports has, Charlton. We have people with all the finances in the world, and Thomas Benson is a man in his 80s. You know, I don't know how he's going to spend all the money. I know he's going to have retirement. I think I'm going to head down there.
We talked about Star Wars and Star Trek going back into the future. Darth Vader, all them good boys, they have a time machine, Big C, and they're all part of that. I want to bring it back to the past and in the future how it ties together. We talked about how so many great things happened with Lyndon Baines Johnson. making the voting rights for African Americans, and how many Black Americans have opened that door in the sports industry, and I've made it a $1 billion industry. I just want to touch on so many people talking about what will happen with LeBron James, where will he go, where will Kyrie Irving go. But what I love about LeBron's not a sycophant. LeBron's a businessman. While people are talking about where Kyrie's going to go, where LeBron's going to go, LeBron invested $1 million into a pizza company called Blaze. It's now worth $30 to $40 million because he didn't go out and buy gold chains like a lot of knuckleheads do. He actually went out and put his money behind something that could grow. Just talk about how that's possible because of what Lyndon Baines Johnson did. It's not because he's a great athlete. It's because the opportunity was there. And as we create opportunities for the next generation, the way Lyndon Baines Johnson, our former president, did for us, then all people will have the chance to pursue equality. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Johnson, isn't it ironic that our brethren within this media realm only talk about the athleticism of athletes?
Yeah.
And that they have some inner-strife bickering. Ironically, these athletes don't come out and talk about their bickering.
No.
It's always someone in the media making up this story of sensationalism.
Yeah.
But when you talk about LeBron and many other African-American and even white professional athletes and former professional athletes investing in corporate America, becoming solvent, that's what they do. Everybody doesn't go out and buy the gold chains, the watches, and 93 cars, okay?
Yeah.
Everyone.
Well, get off the cars. It's okay to have 93 cars, okay? Jay Leno's not the only one, Big C, okay? That's okay. Stay off the car stuff.
But, as we look at the entrepreneurship of professional athletes in the crossing of sports, Jonathan, these athletes are very vested, whether it's in the restaurant industry, whether it's in the golf industry, whether it's in the hotel and travel industry. Athletes diverse themselves. LeBron, has a corporation. And that corporation is LeBron, and he surrounded himself with his business associates, but, Phil Jackson, your homeboy, calls him a posse.
The posse, Posse's on Broadway, huh?
Posse and suit and ties and stuff in a corporate boardroom. It's what's something that parts of society don't want to let go, especially with the African-American athlete. To think that they have the stability and the cerebralness to go out and incorporate themselves. It's one of the things that have been talked about for decades, that African-Americans can't play quarterback because they're not cerebral enough. They can't play the center position because they're not cerebral enough. They can't play the middle linebacker position because they're not cerebral enough. They have to make all these play calls. But when you step back, Charlton, and see how the African-American athlete has incorporated himself in society and into communities to make them all better through investments and involvement, Charlton, and not just LeBron. LeBron is just one of many. He just happens to be the most notarized one right now because of his playing time. But there are so many athletes. I mean, we go back to Bo Jackson. Bo Jackson is so immersed in the business world. We talk about the SEC running backs, which was Bo Jackson. We look at Herschel Walker, who owns the largest African-American trucking company in the United States.
I didn't know that.
So well beyond their years, Drew Pearson, as a former Dallas Cowboy wide receiver, has a company that's worth over $15 million in the Dallas area. So when we look at the diversity of African-American athletes, they're not out in the clubs partying, Jonathan. They're not trying to draw attention to themselves. They're like any wealthy white American. They just go in and do their job. They employ a whole plethora of employees. But they don't go pat themselves on the back and say, hey, I got this over here. They're not looking for the latest pair of sneakers to put on their feet, Jonathan. They're not looking for the latest big watch to put around their wrist. They're not looking for the latest vehicle to drive. They're going out there being solid Americans. And one thing that I dislike about our sports broadcasting community is that they don't make this known to the American public.
That's true.
They only want you to know the last guy to dunk a basketball, to catch a football, to throw a strike.
How much he bench presses and all that stuff. Well, Big C,
they want you to know about athletes.
I think that's why Big C Sports is the #1 sports show in the universe. And I don't say that lightly because we touch all spectrums. We have a following all over the world. And I want to bring this up because it's about, just like in Star Trek, they could go back into the past. They can go into the future. When Captain Kirk said, beam me up, Scotty, I think we can do the same things. We can pull people up if we just let them know how to follow that yellow brick road. I think about someone like a Warren Buffett, who's kind of a mentor for Jay-Z, who's in the rap music industry, he and Beyonce. But what if Warren said no? It is too early. Let's wait another 50 years. What if Jay-Z inspired somebody? Jay-Z went out and created his own brand. What if he said to the next person, Jay-Z, can I have a few minutes of your time to get some knowledge? What if he said, no, I'm too busy? It goes back to that commercial. And all of us can remember it. Mean Joe Green played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, that Mean Joe Green steel curtain defense, and it was a commercial, but it's so poignant. He was walking off the field, I guess he was injured, and there's a little boy that said, Mean Joe. And he tried to get his attention. And he said, long story short, Mean Joe walked away and later tossed the boy his jersey after the guy gave him his Coke. I think that's the same way we can pass knowledge. And what I want to do with Big C Sports is I want to reach out to some of the top sports agents in the world, some of the top sports broadcasters, men and women, some of the top people in business, because we have the ability to create if we just realize that everybody has the opportunity, but it takes someone to open the door for you. Big C, does that make any sense at all?
Well, Charlton, I look at how broadcasters move from entity to entity in this world. But really, who has the control? Do the broadcasters have the control, or do the producers and directors have the control? Yes, everybody can be replaced.
Yeah.
But there's only so much talent out there that you can replace. And so in passing on your knowledge back and forth, helping young broadcasters, potential broadcasters that are coming along, sharing what you know with them. None of us control the airways. None of us will stay on that airway forever.
Right.
So you will be replaced. You and I have talked about that many times. We understand the entities of the business.
Big C, I just hope we're not replaced by robots. There's a computer called Watson. It knows a lot more than we do, Big C. Go right ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, when you look at ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports, there's nobody that's on ESPN that was there originally.
I know, that's a shame.
So everybody's been replaced over the time of ESPN, over the 35 years that they've been broadcasting.
Yeah.
So everybody times come.
Yeah.
It just happens. I mean, people that you grew up with on ABC, NBC, CBS, they've all come and gone throughout time.
Yeah.
But that's the evolution of everything in life, Charles.
Yeah.
So mentorship is the number one thing that you have to look for, whether it's in sports, whether it's in business, life. That's what dads do to their sons. They mentor them on how to become great men, Charles.
Yeah.
You can't be in a situation where you don't see your dad and say, well, I'm going to learn from my dad. I had a bad dad, so I'm going to be opposite of him.
Right.
How do you know what opposite of that dad is if you haven't had time with him?
Yeah.
If you haven't gone through the rites of passage?
Yeah.
That's what football coaches, all sports coaches do, Charlton. They take young men and women through the rites of passages. They teach them the proper way to prepare for a game, to prepare for life, to prepare to be interactive with others, how to be a support cast. That's what sports does for people. And broadcasting should be the same way.
I agree.
You should be the mentorship just like a head coach on a sports team.
Big C, that's a very good point. We cover a lot of sports. Clayton Kershaw, obviously the ace pitcher for the Dodgers, may be out 4 to 6 weeks. I would still think if the good old boys at Chavez Ravine can bring in Chapman, could you imagine Chapman closing, throwing 100 miles per hour fireballs every time he's behind? It doesn't matter. Ahead or behind, you can't hit 100 miles per hour almost every pitch if you can go 7. Actually, sometimes he goes 7 to 9 innings. So obviously, maybe they'll make that move down south for the Dodgers. But also, Jose Altuve, I think he's batting .508. Big C, he must be batting with a laser beam because that's not natural for someone to bat .508. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Johnson, when you look at baseball, he's been the top hitter over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And down in Houston, this is one of the organizations that really doesn't get the notoriety being in the southern Midwestern part of the United States.
Yeah.
But, you think about, Greg and with the Yankees getting all the...
Oh, Judge, with Judge, he's kind of run out of steam right now, though. And Judge,
he hasn't done much since the All-Star break. But, we have Yuri hitting .508 in the month of July.
Yeah.
I mean, that's every time he walks up, you might as well just say send him to first base.
Yeah.
Because of the time that's where it's going to end up.
Yeah.
He has half the home run to Judge, but this is a guy who's been consistent. And when you look at him in stats, he's only 5'8".
Yeah.
But he's one heck of a ball player, and that's the one thing you can't judge a baseball player like as you can a football player.
Look at Pete Rose. Look at Pete Rose, one of the best hitters in the history of baseball. It's a shame he's not in the Hall of Fame yet. Hopefully he'll get there. But if you look at how he wasn't a 6'3", 6'4", 6'8" like Judge is, Big C. He wasn't like Barry Bonds, a 6'2" guy, or Mark McGwire, Canseco, 6'4", 6'5". But he knew how to put the ball. He knew how to hit the bat on the ball and knew where the ball was going and being able to anticipate. So obviously, I think they put so much emphasis on how tall a guy is as opposed to how accurate he is swinging the bat. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I go back to Joe Morgan, the great second baseman of the Cincinnati Reds.
Oh, yeah.
Joe stood 5'8", and
yeah.
he packed a lot of power, Jonathan. He was always a threat when he was in the batter's box and played it with one of the greatest baseball teams of all time, the Big Red Machine. He was a member of that team along with Johnny Bench, Pete Rose, George Foster, Dave Concepcion. There was many great
Hall of Famers.
Red team.
Yeah.
Hall of Fame players.
Yeah.
But Joe Morgan was just as large in stature as anyone at 5'8".
Yeah.
And he was fearless at the baits, at home plate, as well as at second base.
Yeah.
So when you look at what a player brings to the ballpark, it's all about the tenacity that they possess. Even a guy that you split out there with your beloved Dodgers, Ron Saint, who's at third base, who's a tremendous power hitter.
Yeah.
Pedroia with the Red Sox.
Yeah.
When you look at him, Dustin, I mean, he hits the ball out of Fenway Park.
Yeah.
So baseball players, when you think about the determination, but all of these guys, Charlton, went through that rites of passage where they listened to the mentorship that was bestowed to them when they were younger.
Yeah.
And that's what allowed them to get to the level of where they are now.
Well, Big C, that's a very good point. Going back to the Dodgers, one of the reasons I like the Dodgers, seeing the Giants win 3 World Series in the past several years, Big C, over here in San Francisco, and just being at the old Candlestick Park that I used to sneak into when I was a little boy, Big C. I'm glad they didn't have security back then the way they did now. Imagine the guys from the Giants that are in the Hall of Fame, like the great Willie Mays and Marichal, and you have McCovey. You can sneak into the game and watch those guys play. You have guys that can't even get out of the batter's box. You got to pay to see them, Big C. That make any sense?
Baseball now has become so secure about its product.
Yeah.
You even miss one player that used to be a part of that organization, Baby Bull, Orlando Cepeda.
Oh, yeah, Cepeda.
Got rid of when they brought in McCovey because they had 2 great first basemen. And he ended up going on to the Twins. But, you think about where all sports is now, Charlton.
Yeah.
Where the security level of all sports, and because of the finances that it involves.
Yeah.
It's not so much about security against the fans. It's the finance. That's the one thing that they want to protect.
Yeah.
More than anything in professional sports is the financial integrity of the game.
Big C, that's a very good point. I do want to say that sports is a billion-dollar industry, and boys and girls sports is the foundation to this billion-dollar industry. And for every sporting event, you need sports and athletic insurance. We work with Ben and Mark. They've been around half a century, and they work with Big C Sports. And also, Big C, I want to tell you, if you're a pro athlete, a collegiate athlete, your high school mom and pop soccer league, they can get you covered. But Big C, I want to touch on something on the second part of our program, and it's about justice in this country and how it's ferreted out. We talked about the riots in Detroit earlier this week and how they played the game anyway, where they had the Tigers and also the Yankees playing. Now, this may be a big story. It may not. We know what's happening with Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss, and whether there was an escort number call one time out of several hundred phone calls one time, and that cost him a job. I think that's a farce, because if we tell the truth, some of these investigators check their phone records and see how many people they're calling, Big C. It might be a lot more than Hugh Freeze, whether it was one time or a couple times. I think it's a joke, but also something that just happened, and we were just talking about this. Dallas Cowboys released, I guess Lucky is an oxymoron on this term, Lucky Whitehead released because he was accused of a crime in Virginia. And now, I mean, I'm not saying that's why the Cowboys cut him. Jerry Jones cuts people all the time. But it seems ironic that he was let go, and that may have been the straw that broke the camel's back. And then a few days later, law enforcement comes out and says, we had the wrong guy. Did that cost the man his job, or is this just the way they wanted to get rid of him anyway, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is an odd story with Big Special, but this is one that the NFL honestly needs to step in on.
Yeah.
Well, when you look at the history of the Dallas Cowboys under the ownership of
Oh, my goodness.
This has been America's crime team. Not America's team, but America's crime team. When you look at the history of the Dallas Cowboys and the arrest record that they've had of players up and down the list under his ownership,
yeah.
If you don't have a criminal record, it seems like he does not want to.
Well, they have more arrests than Lombardi trophies, Big C. That's what you're trying to say?
Well, Charles, if you look at their defense right now, from the league.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
5 players on their defense are under drug suspension from the league. We have all these allegations against Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
These alleged allegations against Ezekiel Elliott. So Jerry Jones endorses the criminal mentality. I mean, he signed Greg Harding, who had been a convicted felon, brought him in, had him play because he was a football player.
Yeah.
You go back to the days when Jimmy Johnson was the coach. Look at the number of players who were arrested under Jimmy Johnson's watch.
Yeah.
They kept playing from the Dallas Cowboys. The thing that I'm troubled with more than anything else, and I'm troubled by Jerry Jones' mentality that it's okay to be a criminal and play for the Dallas Cowboys, I'm troubled by the commissioner.
Yeah.
Even more so, Joseph. It's like, you cut Whitehead, and this was for one alleged incident.
And he's innocent, 100% innocent.
But Ezekiel Elliott has 3 hanging over his head.
Yeah.
One that we all witnessed on television.
Yeah.
And there's been nothing done.
Yeah.
This reminds me of the presidency of the United States.
Yeah.
Let's go over here and throw some trash out the car that people will see.
Yeah.
To deflect from what we're dumping over here illegally in this dumpster.
Yeah.
Okay? This is the same thing that Jerry Jones has, the Donald Trump mentality right now.
Yeah.
Well, the severe stuff, I don't want you guys to pay attention to. Let me go over here and eliminate this minor stuff, and maybe that'll draw some media attention, have people talking about Whitehead versus talking about my star player over here, Elliott.
And also, I mean, not to throw, and because nobody's perfect, we all have some stuff going on, but even, Michael Irvin just got, I guess they're not going to press charges on some stuff that he did. I just hope that players can really, because Colin Kaepernick can't get a job because he stood up for Black Lives Matter, but guys are caught up in all kind of garbage, and they just get hey, man, we can't wait till we get you back on the team, Big C, and I just think that's the wrong message to send.
Yeah. The NFL is the felony network.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
It's a felony league. And, National Felony League.
And it doesn't have to be that way.
NFL stands for.
Yeah.
National Felony League. You spend $8 million prosecuting Tom Brady for deflated football. $8 million. Okay?
Yeah, and that was more egregious than guys that do other things. Yeah, I know. It's a shame.
You got a felony record, the National Felony League, the NFL, it's okay.
Yeah.
We want you here because you're a bad boy.
And
the game is violent enough, but we need some felons. This reminds you of the longest yard.
Yeah.
With Burt Reynolds back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Where you had all these cons, playing against the guards in football.
Yeah.
And basically, that's what football is becoming to a degree, is that you have so many cons playing the game, is that it's become acceptable because it's a violent game.
And it doesn't have to be that way. And I think even the great Burt Reynolds played at Florida State. Lee Corso, I think, was his quarterback back in the day. But I want to touch on something, too, because Big C, as we close out our final segment for today, is beautiful. It is July 25th, 2017. We've been doing this segment on what conference has the best running backs in the history of college football. We first started with the Pac-12, was formerly the Pac-10 and Pac-8. You came up with Marcus Allen. We went to the SEC and we came up with Herschel Walker. We went up to the North and came up with Ron Dane. A lot of people might think that it might be not Ron Dane, but two-time Heisman Trophy winner Archie Griffith might have been the pick. And then we went down to the Southwest Conference. A lot of people don't think about Eric Dickerson and what he had in the backfield, and we think about Ricky Williams and the great Earl Campbell. So many great athletes, Big C. Yesterday we talked about the ACC, and they have their own plethora of running backs. But I want to get on something that I think is so kind of eye-opening to everyone that follows sports all over the universe, Big C. When we talk about the Swac and how that area has been pillaged by major colleges for the black athlete. It goes back to the great Paul Bear Bryant when they lost to USC and Sam Bam Cunningham. They didn't give him moonshine the way they gave this last team at USC that played at Alabama, but he said, I got to get me some of them. And what some of them means, I just want to run down some of the top athletes in the history of the SWAC or the historically black colleges. Big C, there's more of them in the Hall of Fame than there are from the major conferences, especially if they don't get the same type of publicity. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charles, it's an up and down ledger of Hall of Fame athletes, Super Bowl stars, NFL All-Pros that came out of the SWAC.
Yeah.
For decades, this conference was dominant as far as a feeder line to the NFL. But yet, it did not get the notoriety nor the television recognition.
Yeah.
Because you could get these players for free, basically, in comparison to what you had to pay the kids from the white universities.
Yeah.
All the NFL teams knew where the talent was, and they went down and plucked it over and over. It didn't make any difference what position you were looking at, Charlton.
Yeah.
Whether you were looking at offensive linemen, defensive linemen, linebacker, you got them all. I
Yeah.
mean, the Hall of Fame is filled with them, Charlton. You can look at modern players, you can look at older players. They were all there, from the first Super Bowl to the last Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You think about touchdowns scored in the first Super Bowl was from the Swac,
Yep.
the running back.
Yep.
The last Super Bowl, the winning touchdown, from the Swac also, Charlton.
Yeah.
So, when you look at the history in between there, and you think about great running backs who came out of that conference, and a lot of, people will remember some, people won't remember some.
Yeah.
But Leroy Kelly, a tremendous running back out of that conference, Charlton, was the running back who replaced the great Tim Brown in Cleveland.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Leroy Kelly went on to have a stellar career with the Cleveland Browns. Everybody thought it was going to be Ernie Davis. Unfortunately, he died of leukemia coming out of Syracuse before he could ever don an NFL uniform.
Yeah.
But Leroy Kelly had a tremendous career with the Browns, and the Browns were one of the flagship franchises of the NFL, and he was one of the top running backs at Morgan State during that time.
That's a very good point, Big C. That's a very good point. We think of guys like Donald Driver, Alcorn State, what he's done with the Packers. We think about Robert Porcher out of South Carolina State and what he's done with the Patriots. Also, some big names going back in the day, Everson Walls out of Eddie Robinson School, Grambling State University down there in Georgia, and played for the Dallas Cowboys. We talked about the great late Steve McNair, Alcorn State, what he did in the NFL and going to the Super Bowl for the Titans. And then one of the most baffling reasons that I can't find why this guy didn't get the chance to come back and sign with another team, Doug Williams, another guy from Eddie Robinson's team at Grambling State, went on to score, I think he threw 5 touchdown passes in the Super Bowl for the Washington Redskins. Big C, what happened to not having him come back and play more when he set records in the greatest game, in my opinion, in the history of sports? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, what he did was he embarrassed the establishment.
Yeah.
The thing what could not occur did occur, and it occurred on a national television stage, Charlton, for all of America and the world to see.
Yeah.
It's parallel to what Kaepernick has done, is that you have embarrassed us and opened up Pandora's box, and what we said was impossible.
Yeah.
It did not occur. It did occur.
Yeah.
But, when we look at this conference in totality, Charlton, we think about really the most greatest celebrated, appreciated running back of all time, and that would be Sweetness.
Yeah, Walter Payton. Yeah.
Okay, out of Jackson State.
Yeah.
He played there from 71 to 75. First-round draft pick of the Chicago Bears, Charlton, and toiled with that team just like a Barry Sanders did in Detroit.
Yeah.
He played his heart out every game, Charlton, playing for a losing organization. He played a decade before he got a chance to play on a winning organization, Charlton, there in Chicago. Unfortunately, he lost his life battle to cancer, Charlton, colon cancer, some time ago. But, when he played this game the way that everybody today thinks about playing the game.
Yeah.
All out. So many players from traditional black colleges, revel themselves after Walter Payton. You think about Jerry Rice and his training routine. It was labeled after Walter Payton. So many players during his time, Charlton, will go try to work out with Walter and find that they could not sustain the workout level that he had during his off-season regimen.
Big C, isn't that amazing?
A trailblazer and a role model.
Isn't that amazing what you just said, that Jerry Rice and Walter Payton, two of the best workout partners in the history of sports, came out of the same conference. They didn't come out of the Pac-12. They didn't come out of the SEC. They were not from the Big Ten. They were guys that came out of a conference that's been marginalized and maligned over the years and exploited for taking the great athletes out of there. John Taylor, Delaware State, played for the great 49ers. Ed Too Tall Jones out of Tennessee State with the Dallas Cowboys. And you think about that. And all of these guys, we're talking Hall of Famers. You would think we're kind of mixing up conferences. We talked about Marshall Allen and Herschel Walker and Woody Hayes and all those good old boys up at Ohio State, how he had a lot of good running backs, Archie Griffin, the SEC. This is all out of the Swac in the historically black conference. Nate Newton out of Florida A&M, Aeneas Williams, Southern University, Michael Strahan, Texas Southern, and Harry Carson, South Carolina State. Big C, you know it like no other that I've found. Let me just ask you this question, and as we come to a close, what will it take for that conference to ever get the same type of media attention, because they produce the gold mine of talented athletes that are Hall of Famers? Why are they forsaken? We see schools like up in the Midwest where the Carson Wentz went, North Carolina State. They can't match the NFL and talented players coming out of that conference. Why is it so ignored? Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, I see schools like Eastern Washington, Montana, Northern Arizona, Citadel,
Idaho.
Sanford, Idaho, the little tiny colleges, Charlton, that have never produced anywhere near the level of talent. Even Division 1A schools, Charlton, Division 1 schools, East Carolina, Vanderbilt, schools of this nature, Indiana, who never produced the talent of a Swac conference, Charlton, that get money from the broadcast company. So you say, how do they get the same level of respect? As long as the broadcast companies, Charlton, ignore the traditional black colleges as well as like they've ignored black society. This is what we call systemic racism. Is that if you don't fund it, eventually it goes away. And that's what has occurred, Charlton, because they broadcast high school games. They broadcast Division 1 AA games, Division 3 games, Charlton, Slippery Rock, and schools like this, things that you've never heard of. But these traditional black colleges, Charlton, that have, some 70 players in the NFL Hall of Fame.
And you can Google that. You don't have to wait for some network to tell you. Just Google it.
Some 70 players in the NFL Hall of Fame. So when you talk about the foundation and the backdrop of the NFL that has been neglected by the broadcast networks of ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, ESPN, Charlton, these program companies systematically neglect the traditional black colleges because if they pump finances into them, then they will survive.
Big C, that's a very good point.
Justice that's allowed by our government also, Charlton. This is something when your government needs to step in, because let me explain something to you about broadcasting companies, Charlton. Broadcasting are network, okay? They're government affiliated. They're funded by the government. Free for everybody. So when you hear public service announcements, that's why they're not charged, because that's what broadcast companies were set up for. They found a way to turn this into a financial endeavor. But they're still owed the same amount of time to these traditional black colleges as they give to the traditional white colleges, Charlton. So they're supposed to, by all legal bounds, Charlton, broadcast as many games.
Well, Big C, that's a very good point.
No one brings that issue up from a legality perspective. That when you look at a broadcast company, whether it's radio or television, they are bound to give away free advertising. And broadcasting an African-American sporting event, that's free advertising.
Well, Big C,
they sell sponsorship for it or not, but nobody presses the issue on it, Charlton.
That's a very good point. And that's why we'll press the issue. We could talk about the Humanitarian Sports Award. We could talk about so many things in the world of sports, whether it's Jim Brown or Harry Edwards or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Big C Sports, who's a little bit more bold than all of them, Big C. I do want to say that back in the day, there was a promoter by the name of Drew Mandini Brown, and he worked a lot with Muhammad Ali, and he said, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the world of sports?
Well, Charlton, I'm looking forward to hearing some baseball talk on the networks. And I've heard so much basketball, I didn't know the playoffs were over. The latest thing is the Kyrie LeBron fight is going to outdo the McGregor.
Mayweather and McGregor,
But, I'm always amazed with our guys that are across the networks who know so much about the individuals that the individuals didn't know. So, I'm waiting on the day of honesty. That's what I'm waiting on, is that we can get to that point we deal with what's real and not have to deal with all this fictitious stuff, because we're becoming soap operas now. Because the broadcasters that you have in these boxes nowadays are not knowledgeable about the history of games and sports. And so they go to tabloidism. They're making it a fight between the players now. And I mean, nobody gets along all the time.
Oh, of course.
Athlete.
Of course.
You don't invite everybody to your house. You don't go to everybody's house. If we look at the Patriots, who does Tom Brady hang out with on the Patriots? Nobody.
Right.
He's not hanging out with anybody on the Patriots. He goes on to his family. As many others, just like LeBron. He goes on to his family. So he's not looking to go hang out with Kyrie. These things they do during the time that they're playing. So when you sit there and say that, during the off season that you have to be socialized with each other from a broadcast perspective, stop lying to the public. Do you go home? Do you go out every night when you get off work with everybody you broadcast with? No, you don't. You go home to a family if you have one. So start saying that athletes are normal, and that's what they do also.
Big C, that's a very good point. I want to tell everybody Big C Sports is the only sports show in the universe that does it without a teleprompter, without a producer in our ear. We do it freestyle, and you can hear it freestyle every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide on the iHeartRadio network, the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. We always want to tell you, there's never, ever any reason for domestic violence. If you know any woman or man going through that garbage, just call 911. Don't let them go through it on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports program, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.